everybody, I'm Chef Danielle Sepsy from the Hungry Gnome Bakery in New York City, and this is Gnome at Home. Today on Gnome at Home, we are baking yet again because so many of you loved my copycat recipe for Entenmann's chocolate chip crumb loaf, so I felt like, let's do another. And so many of you asked me to make the classic yellow cake with that chocolate fudge frosting. So I got in the kitchen, I did a lot of trial runs for you guys, and I think I've gotten so close to the real thing, but as always, just one step better, maybe a few steps better. You will still have that nostalgic flavor and texture that you know and love, but it's just gonna be a more premium version of it. So let's get right into it. This is one of those cakes that you will make time and time again because it's just classic. So let's jump right into it. I have here a medium bowl, and to that I'm going to add 1 stick of just room temperature unsalted butter. You don't want it melted, you don't want it too soft, just somewhere in between. And we're gonna beat it with our beaters. You can use a stand mixer, or if you don't have an electric beater or stand mixer, you can also use a little elbow grease, as I always say. We wanna beat this butter until it's nice and light, and we're gonna add that sugar gradually and just get it nice and light and fluffy. Let's add 1 cup of white granulated sugar and just gradually add it. We want this butter sugar mixture nice and light and fluffy. You want to move your bowl around as well while you're doing this, especially if you're using a hand beater, just to really get everything combined. Once it's nice and combined and starting to get light and fluffy, let's add our vanilla extract. You always want to add your flavoring with your fat. It just brings out that flavor even more. So I have pure vanilla extract. This cake has a nice, robust vanilla flavor, so we don't want to be too skimpy here. So we're going to do a nice 2 teaspoons of that pure vanilla extract. And just whip that together, get it combined. Once that's blended, we're going to add eggs, but this is a crucial step here. You need to separate your eggs. We need our yolks and our whites separated. So I have here first 2 egg yolks, just the egg yolks going on. These are large egg yolks. Beat that together. When you're beating, it's important to scrape down the bowl every so often to make sure we're really getting everything nicely combined. Now it's time to add some buttermilk. So the buttermilk has nice acidity, and this helps create a really fluffy, moist cake. So this is 1/3 of a cup of buttermilk. Let's just beat that in. Now for the dry ingredients, let's do it in a separate bowl first and then combine it. So I have 1 cup of cake flour. Cake flour will just help us get a really fluffy, lighter cake as well. Then I have 1½ teaspoons of baking powder. That's our leavening agent. That's gonna make it rise really nicely. And then some salt. We always bake with salt. This is a ½ teaspoon of just fine table salt, and this will just make that flavor pop. Let's just whisk this together. Just add it all at once. I'm going to start with a rubber spatula and just mix this in a little bit first, just so we don't wear it, because the flour will shoot all over me. I know myself by now. So just kind of mix this a little bit. This will be very thick, okay? It's really pretty thick. Okay, when you get most of it in there, we're going to use the hand beaters again, but don't go crazy with this. We don't wanna overmix, because as I always teach you guys, the more you beat something with flour in it, the more the gluten develops, and the tougher and more dense it'll be. So just beat it a little bit. So now for a little extra moistness and a little of that kind of old-fashioned yellow cake flavor, I love to add sour cream to, let's be honest, most of my baked goods by now. You should know this. Sour cream, it's my secret weapon. So I've got a 1/4 cup of nice full-fat sour cream, and just kind of mix with your rubber spatula. Just get that combined. And now 1 more step, the egg whites. You didn't forget about those, I hope. We need to beat these egg whites until they're stiff peaks, and we're gonna fold it gently into that batter, and that's gonna give it this nice lift in the oven and a fluffy texture as well. All these ingredients, fluffy, 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 fluffy. All right, let's beat our egg whites on high speed until they're nice and stiff. haven't already, be sure to check out my pancake recipe, which also has nice stiff egg whites in it. Best pancakes, don't forget that one. My egg whites are nice and stiff. Let's take our batter. We're gonna put all the egg whites in at one time. And we're going to fold it in. You wanna fold it so that we don't deflate all the egg whites, because if you just start whisking rigorously, it defeats the whole purpose of beating the egg whites. Let's just fold from the center and around. And this will start to thin out the batter a little bit so it's more spreadable. Looks great. Let's give it a taste. I know we're not supposed to, but I always do. It tastes like boxed cake mix, but in the best way possible. Now let's get our pan ready. I decided, I have nice baking pans at my house, but I needed to go with the aluminum disposable one so that we can make it as close to Entenmann's as possible. So I had to go to the grocery store and get this. It just was only right. Okay, we need to spray our pan. This is 8 by 8. We're gonna spray it with some non-stick spray, just so everything releases later on. Be sure to preheat your oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure it's nice and hot before you put in anything that you're baking. And now let's put our batter in. Dump that whole thing in. And while I'm doing this, another reminder, everyone, if you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe down below and the notification bell so that you can be alerted every time I post a new recipe. And if you haven't already too, make sure you're following me on Instagram and on TikTok. I post lots of videos and recipes all week long, usually multiple times a day, so definitely check that out as well. Let's spread this evenly in the pan. Now we're ready for the oven. Let's pop this in our 325 degree oven for about 20 minutes, and we'll give it a check and see if it tests clean. If not, we'll put it back in. While our cake is cooling, let's make our topping. So this is kind of a fudgy icing. And in my mind, that's sort of a ganache. So we're gonna make a 2-ingredient, really easy ganache. It starts with some semi-sweet chocolate chips. The color of that Entenmann's icing is pretty dark. So semi-sweet is on the darker side, but also you want a nice, robust chocolate flavor. We wanna get our baker's scale out now. I want 0.6 pounds of the semi-sweet chips. Getting the right ratio here is important, or else you'll have too thin of an icing or too thick of an icing. 0.6 pounds, there we go. Now I have some heavy cream. I'm using 40% fat heavy cream here. You really want between 30 and 40% fat. I heated it up in the microwave for about 1 minute until it was starting to almost simmer. You want it really nice and hot. You can do it on the stove as well. And now just pour that hot cream right over the chocolate. And now we'll just let this sit for about 1 minute and then let everything melt. And then we'll use our beaters and just get it nice and smooth and creamy. Looks like our chips are melted. Let's get our beaters and just beat carefully. I almost wore that. This one. Okay, we got to do this by hand for a minute. Let's whisk it together by hand first. Looks good. Now let's finish it with the beaters. We are ready to ice. I don't know if you remember the Entenmann's cake, but it has also a little drizzle of a darker colored chocolate just subtly on top. So I'm just gonna melt some bittersweet chocolate, about a 1/4 cup or so. We'll put it in a disposable piping bag and just drizzle it on later on. So just another little extra step, totally optional. You wanna check your cake after about 20 minutes. Mine took about 23 minutes. You want it to just be set. So just take a skewer or a toothpick and put it in the center. If it comes out clean, you're good. It also should spring back a little bit when you touch it, but nice kind of golden color, but beautiful yellow color. It's that classic yellow cake that you know and love. Now just let it cool completely, and then we'll ice it with that wonderful fudgy ganache. My cake is nice and cooled. Let's add our nice fudgy ganache. It's kind of set a little bit. It's a little bit thicker now. It's perfect. I'm just going to cover this cake beautifully, and we're gonna make that nice swooping motion. I love that the Entenmann's cakes still have a nice rustic homemade quality to it. And I'm going to pop this in the fridge for maybe 30 minutes or so, just until it kind of sets more. But then otherwise you wanna leave this room temperature, or else the ganache may get too hard. You kind of want that ganache nice and fudgy, but still malleable. Let's take an offset spatula and just swoosh this all over. Again, it's nice and rustic, but get all those nice little swoosh marks. I just love when it looks really just natural. Make sure you get it all the way to the corners. So good. Now I'm gonna pop this in the fridge for just about 30 minutes or so. Once the cake is fairly set, you can just drizzle that extra chocolate over the top. And that will just create a little extra something. Our cake is nice and set. I have to cut into this. We can't wait any longer. It's so fluffy and moist. I cannot wait for you guys to try this. Also, just word to the wise, get yourself a square top spatula like this. It's the best kind of cake spatula. It comes in handy like you would not believe. I mean, guys, that is it. The perfect little layer of that fudgy chocolate icing. The yellow cake inside is so fluffy, kind of close textured, buttery. We've got to give this a taste. Just look at that, fluffy. I mean, that's it. No ifs, ands, or buts. That is the closest thing to the Entenmann's fudge iced golden cake. That's it, but even better. Homemade, no preservatives, beautiful. You're gonna make this time and time again, let me tell you. With a cup of coffee, even in the morning, I'm gonna eat this for breakfast. Once again, thank you guys so much for joining me on Gnome at Home, where we're making the most delicious, nostalgic treats lately. I hope this resonated with you, and I hope you enjoy it with your family and friends. I know you're gonna love this one, and that's all I gotta say. Enjoy.